What's up, everybody? Welcome to Nutrition Corner on Soul Focus TV. So, what do we have going on today? We're talking about metabolism. So, going to get back into our quantitative talk. Quantitative being the energy in and energy out, the counting of calories and macros, things like that. Today, we are talking about the metabolism. So, what actually is it? Everybody says they have a fast or slow metabolism. That's why they're not losing weight. Certain conditions or disorders can affect your metabolism. Age, sex, activity, everything goes into this. So let's start off here. We've got that concept of food is fuel, nothing more, nothing less. Inside every item of food, there are a certain amount of calories, and those calories are the weight of energy according to the macronutrients and micronutrients inside of each compound inside of that food. So nothing more, nothing less. Food is fuel. All right, and the quality, which is going to be a conversation for a different day, is going to determine the nutrient density and things like that. So metabolism itself is just the process of converting that food into usable energy. All right, and our body uses, and they call it the energy currency. Our body uses ATP, this adenosine triphosphate. So it's an adenosine molecule with 3 phosphates attached to it, and that's how energy gets stored in the bonds between those phosphate groups. So what happens is we start with sunlight. Solar energy comes down to the earth. Plants and algae take that light energy and convert it into chemical energy. They create glucose. That's photosynthesis. So we all know that part. All right. And then we all know this part. The herbivores eat the plants, and et cetera, up the food chain it goes. So eventually, this energy gets to humans. That energy is stored in the bonds between those molecules. All right, so a little bit of science today. So we have 3 main metabolic pathways is what they're called. And it's just 3 different processes that your body uses to unleash that energy. So what happens is when you have that ATP, that adenosine triphosphate, what happens is your body will use water to break off one of those 3 phosphate groups. So what happens is you'll have a free-floating phosphate group with adenosine diphosphate, and energy is released in that process. That's the energy that your body uses for absolutely everything. And this happens inside of every single cell in your body. Every cell of your body does this process, and it gets told to do this process by thyroid hormones. All right, so that's a lot of the reason why any conditions or issues with thyroid, it affects your metabolism, and it affects your ability to gain or lose weight. And that's usually one of the big symptoms that leads to a diagnosis, is the weight gain or weight loss. Let me see, going on track here. So what happens is those thyroid hormones, they are released into the bloodstream. When they get in contact with each cell, it's kind of like the site supervisor. It tells the cell that it needs to ramp up energy production. So what the cell does is it tries to unlock the door, but it's got a bouncer. So glucose cannot get into the cell to be converted into energy because there's a bouncer at the door, and that bouncer is an insulin receptor. All right, so unless insulin is inserted into the cell wall, it doesn't open up the door. So it's kind of like the key, and I think we've talked about this before. Without insulin having that key in the lock, the door can't open. And if the door can't open, that cell's not producing energy, or the glucose isn't getting into the cell to produce energy. You get the tired, fatigued, as well as a host of other issues and conditions and disorders. So That's the main process that your body will use for energy production. Then talking about these pathways. So we have the ATP-PCs, the adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine system. This is like, think about doing like single rep power lifts. It only provides enough energy for an immediate use. So think of like the runner at the starting line. His first step, maybe 3 steps in, that's basically all he's going to get out of that ATP-PC system. All right, so what happens is your body will take that free-floating phosphate group, uses creatine phosphate, so that's where creatine as supplements will come in. The most common form of creatine is creatine monohydrate or creatine monophosphate, because it introduces another form of that phosphate group. So it can it'll take that ADP, the diphosphate, it'll attach that free-floating phosphate group, and then it'll create ATP again that your body can use to break down and release more energy from. So it kind of like feeds into this cycle. So it constantly creating and breaking down ATP so that your body will be able to keep replenishing energy. The other system is the anaerobic system, where your body's going to use a process known as glycolysis. Little bio and chem. Like lysis means your body's going to break it down. Genesis means your body's going to build it or create it. So glycolysis is exactly what it sounds like. Your body's going to take glycogen and break it down. All right. So glycogen is the compound of multiple strains of glucose molecules bonded together. So anytime your body breaks one of those down, it's going to create glucose for you. And that cycle lasts, they say, about 60 seconds worth of energy. And then we've got the oxidatives. This is where most of the ATP your body makes comes from. And that's where you're going to have the carbs and fuel, fats being used as fuel. All right, they get broken down for your most immediate energy needs. They'll be used. Otherwise, it's going to be stored as glycogen. So we've got the glycogen. I always say this wrong. Glycogenolysis. That's not right. I can't say it. But that's the process your body's going to take the glycogen and turn it back into glucose. Gluconeogenesis is when your body's going to create glucose out of something that is a non-carb. So that's basically, I have a note talk about, yeah, we talked about that. And then the energy outside of the equation. So we've got the resting metabolic rate, we have the thermic effect of food, we have the thermic effect of activity, and then we have non-exercising activity thermogenesis rather. Those are basically the 4 things or 4 categories of ways that your body burns up energy. The resting metabolic rate, just to keep the body's physiological systems going. Thermic effect of food, how much energy it takes for your body to break things down. The thermic effect of activity is your exercise stuff. And then the non-exercise activity thermogenesis is your daily activities, walking, fidgeting, pacing, things like that. Anything that's considered movement that's not considered exercise. I think that is about it. As always, any questions, go ahead, hit me up. And otherwise, we will see you next week.